Hi, this is Steve from yourcreativelife.com talking today about what it is that this tentative agreement is between the Writers Guild of America and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, the AMPTP. I have gotten questions from people out there, from you folks, as well as from people here in my life and elsewhere, how this all turned out and what the specifics are. And so I'm here to lay out some specifics for you. Now, couple of caveats. This is obviously my YouTube channel and not a news report. So I'm going to do my best with a lot of information, much of which is technical, based on the MBA, the Minimum Basic Agreement for Writers. Some of the details and the nitty-gritty we won't get into, but I'll give you some overviews and some basics. Now, one thing that I don't know whether I've shared here, I think I might have, is that I'm a captain, a WGA captain, and that's a person who basically communicates between the union and certain members. So I have 30 members on my team, and I email them weekly and have throughout the strike, and actually before the strike, about what is going on to date. I just emailed them a little while ago because there's a big meeting here in Los Angeles to discuss these details from the tentative agreement with the AMPTP tonight, because the next step in our process is that we have to ratify the agreement, basically voting on whether we think this is a good deal for members of our union. And so we need to learn as much about it as humanly possible so that we can know on what basis to vote. And there's a lot of information here, but I think it's a great deal. It looks really good to me, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm very happy to tell you about it. Now, this is a bunch of very technical jargon, not too technical, but you'll see what I mean. And I'm going to hit these, what to me are 15 points that I think speak to why this is a good deal. And I will say this before I start. One of the things that we as the WGA wanted was really to affect writers on every level. There are people who are soap writers. There are people who are TV writers. There are people who are screenwriters. There are people who work in comedy variety or quiz shows or, all of those different spaces. We really wanted to make meaningful advances and change for these different members of our writing family. And I think you'll see how that was done in these 14, 15 items that I think are really important. The first one is there are minimums. The minimum is basically what a person can be paid, no matter what. And you can always, if you have a good agent, you can get something above the minimum, but all minimums are going to, or most minimums, I should say, are going to increase 5% across the board. And I think that's a great thing. Health insurance contributions will also increase in year 2. And that's one of the things that I think is really important about unions, is that not only do I get paid for being a writer, but I create a pension. I have health insurance. All of these things get paid by the producers as part of my salary, and health insurance contributions for writers will increase in the second year of this contract. Writing teams, and this is really big, writing teams are going to receive pension and health contributions as though they were a single writer. Now, in the past, if you were a writing team, let's say 2 people who, you'll see this on TV shows where it says, Joe Schmo and Susie Wong, and they're a writing team, and they're listed together on screen. That means they basically are considered a writing entity. They write together and collaborate on every script, every outline, that sort of thing. Those people used to get pension and health contributions, again, for their health insurance, for the future, for their retirement. They used to get those at half for each, because they were essentially one entity. Not really great way to build a living. Now those writing teams receive pension and health contributions as a single writer. So each one will get the same pension and health that the rest of us get who are credited as single writers. That's huge. AI, artificial intelligence, cannot, according to the MBA, the Minimum Basic Agreement, cannot write or rewrite any literary material or be the source of literary material. That essentially means that artificial intelligence, a computer, can never be credited as a writer, can never take over, can never be the, create something that is the source of a TV series or a movie it just is not possible based on this new rule in the MBA, the Minimum Basic Agreement. And that is good news for all of us. It basically means that human writers are the only ones who can create literary material, and that is huge. All right. Also, screenwriters have a guaranteed second step. Now, that means that in the past, screenwriters would get paid once, and sometimes if there were rewrites, we hear about this famously, those rewrites would go off to some other writer, and the screenwriter would never see it, would never get asked to, if he or she was asked to do something, they wouldn't be paid for it. It was a disaster, according to my screenwriter friends. Now they get a guaranteed second step, which means a rewrite that is paid. So if there's more work to do, they're guaranteed to get a second step with money, second pass, all of that stuff, however they work that out with their producer, they're guaranteed to get 2 payments rather than 1. And that is a really good thing. Next, screenwriters must be paid 50% of their fee at commencement. So often these screenwriters would start working, there was no money until later, perhaps when they turned in their final draft. Now they get 50% paid upfront, which again is really helpful to them. Streaming features, so movies that are streaming on a streaming platform, those will have increases financially in compensation for those people who have created those features, and in residuals, which is another great thing. There's a whole bunch of residual stuff that I'm about to tell you about. So this is for feature writers, and that's a really good thing. Now, streaming of foreign things that are on foreign parts of, say, Netflix, whoever the foreign viewers are, there's going to be a streaming residual based on foreign viewers and subscribers, and that will increase in compensation up to 76%. So that's fantastic and amazing based on those numbers of foreign viewers. There's also a viewership-based streaming bonus. So depending on if you have a quote-unquote hit show on Netflix, and they will give you a bonus based on viewer streaming. Now, how will they do that? Because data transparency, whether these companies would tell us about, who's watching and when, used to be something they would never do. But now there's data transparency that's being initiated between the Writers Guild of America and the companies. They will share between the two the total hours of domestic and international viewing. Now, what that means is that those numbers will only go back and forth between the Guild and the AMPTP. They will not be published in the newspaper, in the Hollywood Reporter, the way we know about box office for movies and all that stuff. That's not happening. But in any case, there is a deal, and writers will be paid based on this information that goes back and forth between the WGA and the AMPTP. So that's some level of data transparency, which I think is great. There will be a weekly pay increase also for series television. So if you're on a series television experience, like I am on a TV show, that weekly pay will increase for all levels, which I think is great. And then there's the matter of development rooms, which has been one of these things where now production companies want people to be in a room to develop the series. It's not necessarily going to be on, but they might want people together to sort of, figure out a season. Now these development rooms will be guaranteed for a certain number of weeks. Part of the problem was people would do these development rooms for incredibly short periods of time and then be out of work. And it was harder to build a year's worth of work going from development room, mini room to mini room. Now these rooms will be guaranteed for 19 weeks, and they will have higher pay than regular writers' rooms. So if you're putting in this foundational work in potentially a shorter period of time, the pay will be higher, and I think that's great. Here's something that I think is fantastic. It's number 13 on my list. Staff writers get script fees. Now, let me explain. Interestingly enough, the staff writer in the world of TV writing is the lowest level. That's the entry level. It goes staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, executive producer, and there's a consulting producer in there somewhere. So those are all the potential hierarchical levels, and staff writer is the lowest, even though it's the only one of those that contains the word writer. It's kind of ironic. But in any case, staff writers, even though it was in the MBA, the minimum basic agreement, that staff writers could get script fees, most of the time staff writers have not been paid when they wrote a script. So if you're brand new on a show, like when I was brand new on my first show was Covert Affairs, I wrote a script for Covert Affairs. I did not get a script fee for that script, even though other people on the show who were higher levels did get not only their weekly pay, but a script fee. Now, staff writers get script fees across the board. It will always happen. And that's a fantastic benefit for people who are entry level, and, you know, a great boon for the pocketbook as well. And I'm really excited about that for those writers. Last two things I'm going to talk about. One, the minimum number of writers in a writer's room and the minimum number of writer producers in a writer's room has been established. Now, this is one of the things we wanted from early on. We're basically to say in the MBA that writers' rooms have to be a thing, that they must be, that there's a minimum number of writers is required. So people have to hire a minimum number of writers. Now, there is the occasional show, and I think there is language in here that I don't reference, where if a company comes to somebody who is, you know, who wants to write the show themselves, like a Mike White in that universe, you know, those sorts of things, then that is possible that that person could do that in the White Lotus world, is what I had sort of forgotten to say a moment ago. But anyway, other than that, there are minimum numbers now of writers and writer producers who have to be in a writer's room based on the number of episodes. And I think that's great. So you're going to have like a certain number of lower level writers who have to be hired, certain level of writer producers who have to be hired, and people can't play fast and loose with those numbers, which guarantees employment for a certain number of writers, which I think is great. And finally, the Appendix A writers, and these are all of those other people, not part of my world, but certainly out there, who write comedy variety scripts, who write quiz shows and other non-dramatic programs. And those programs go to streaming. That's been the Wild West for quite some time, with, you know, what would be a late night talk show, but it's on Hulu or Netflix or whatever. Now there are clear minimums for those kinds of work. For quiz show writers, for comedy and variety writers, those people now have minimum payments that they must get, which didn't exist before. And I think that's really fantastic. And absolutely, here's the very last one. I lied to you a moment ago. Soap opera writers, daytime writers, they will get WGA negotiated compensation and residuals if those shows move to streaming. So that's another thing that hadn't been enshrined in the MBA, the minimum basic agreement, that if those shows, Days of Our Lives, you know, all that kind of thing, General Hospital, those shows go to streaming and live on streaming, that was a netherworld of, you know, confusion and no minimums. But now they will get negotiated compensation by the WGA. It's in there that's part of what will happen in the future if the show moves to streaming. And so in the streaming world, they will get potentially treated like everybody else, and that is better compensated than they were before. So that's a whole bunch of stuff. Really informative, I think. I'm really happy with this agreement. I'm going to go to the big meeting tonight at the Hollywood Palladium with a bunch of other writers, where I'll listen to the members of the WGA negotiating committee step through these things and answer questions from members like me about the different parts of this agreement and what they mean and whether they're good enough. And then we get the opportunity from October 2nd, 2023 to October 9th of 2023 to vote yes or no, on this deal. But I think most of the writers I know are incredibly happy that that this has come about in this way, that really every tier of writer has been affected, and every tier of writer has improved conditions for wages and working and pension and health. So many great things to be happy about in this deal. So thanks for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you would, if you liked it. And make sure that you subscribe to this channel for additional content. Every week I post a new video, even when I'm on a show, which I'm going back to my show and I will be super busy, but I will take lessons from the writer's room and I will bring them here to you as part of my desire to help you be a better and more knowledgeable writer in the world. Check out all things that I do as a writing coach, both free, paid, and unpaid, at yourcreativelife.com, where you'll find out about my free newsletter, the podcast that I do, this YouTube channel, and all sorts of other things like articles on the site. And it's a great way to keep up with me and to allow me to keep up with you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.